Hey everyone, this is Bob McIntosh from Mass Hire Lowell Career Center. I have the pleasure of being with Lisa Rangel, who is a professional resume writer, previously a recruiter, and so she knows a lot about the job search. She knows what employers are looking for. And what we're going to talk about today is how job searching changes after 40. This is a very popular title and I think very timely. So I'm going to ask you to look over to your right where you can raise your hand, you can ask questions, and you can download the PDF of this presentation when I attach it. Now, Lisa has asked me to allow you all to ask as many questions as you want. Now, when you ask questions in the question box, would you please type before it question, the word question, and then make the question as short as you can so that I can read them very quickly, and then Lisa will answer your questions. Okay, so let's go further.
All right, rock and roll.
All right, so this is a little bit about Lisa, and for those of you who've attended my guest speaker webinars, you know that I don't read their bio, but I do want to say that I've known Lisa on LinkedIn since November 18th of 2021. That's when Lisa and I connected on LinkedIn. And since then, I've really had the pleasure of reading a lot of her content. She is very knowledgeable on the job search. And I got to tell you one thing about Lisa is that if she doesn't agree with what you say, she'll let you know. Right, Lisa?
I do as politely as I can.
As
with
politely as she can.
behind it, with reasons behind it.
Well, that's what I like, though. I like a little bit of disagreement, you know, as long as it's polite, because, hey, if everyone is agreeing with what you say, then do you really know if it's any good, what you're writing?
Yeah, it's an echo chamber, right? So there you go.
Exactly. So I just also learned that Lisa has recently moved to Ashbury Park, the home of the boss. Raise your hand if you have been in Ashbury Park or if you liked Bruce Springsteen. Raise your hand. All right, good. Walter. Excellent. Virginia. Teresa. Ronald. Nice. Paul.
It's a good
Very
crowd.
good. So Lisa, can you see the hand raising feature?
I cannot. I can't
Okay.
see the questions in the chat either. I thought I was going to be able to, but I'm not.
Okay, well, I will have to read the questions to you, but a lot of hands went up. I'm very
Awesome.
here to see that.
That's
So
fantastic.
so let's go forward. But would you like to add a little bit more about yourself?
You know, I think you basically said it all. I was a recruiter for 13 years before I started my company, Chameleon Resumes, in 2009, and we've been working successfully with job seekers at all levels, although we primarily focus at the executive level. The executives refer us their professional levels, spouses and friends and their adult children. So we do serve a few different demographics, not just the executive set. So I feel like this could apply to a few different types of individuals, even though we're focusing over 40. So.
Okay. So what industry did you recruit in?
I started off in legal, and then I spent most of my career, actually, I shifted over to accounting and finance, and that's where I spent 9 of the 13 years that I recruited working in that field. And then as I started getting promoted, overseeing other offices and other disciplines, I oversaw both contract hire and direct hire, and I wound up overseeing different groups that did IT and HR and all different other disciplines based on overseeing a particular office that had a few different groups under it. So.
And so with your own business, you've had direct experience with hiring your resume writers.
So, right. I'm not hiring a whole lot internally. You know, we're a small team of 9, but we're working with, no, it's definitely, you know, we're just not IBM, right? So I'm not doing it every day, but we are obviously working with job seekers to help them get themselves hired, and their success, we want to contribute to it because then it begets referrals and happy clients and keeps us alive as we have been since 2009. So it's something that we have some insight in.
All right. Okay. So are we ready to rock and roll?
I love rock and roll. Let's do it.
Okay. On that, then Lisa also said that one thing she really loves about Ashbury Park is that there is a lot of music.
Yes.
Okay. So what we're going to be talking about today is, first of all, addressing the white elephant in the room. And I think you all know what I'm going to be talking about, and what to do about, let's move the boxes, ageism, understanding what it takes to succeed in the job search, and some tactics to use in your job search. And then, of course, I have polls. So for those of you who've seen my webinars, you know that I love polls. And I usually start with one, okay? And so if you would answer this question, because this will give Lisa a better idea of who's in the audience, and it is, how old are you? Okay. And we love your participation. And already it's kicking up, good.
Since I'm an organizer and a panelist, I can't participate, but I just want to tell everybody I'm 52.
You're what? You're 52?
I'm 52.
I'm 59, okay?
There you
Full
go.
disclosure.
In the
Yes.
spirit, helping each other out in full disclosure. We're not hiring anybody here, so this is not
Right, exactly.
Should not be asked in the hiring process. Just to get an idea of everybody.
Yep. And so 90% of you have voted. I'll give you 5 more seconds to close and then close the poll. Okay. And thank you for participating. So Lisa, can you see the results there?
I can. The majority are in that 50 to 60 range.
Yeah. Any thoughts on this? Oh, we have 7% who are over 70.
Yeah.
Welcome.
95% are over 40. So there you go. I can tell you that what we're going to discuss today, I really think will apply to everyone. And, even those of you under 40, I really think there's some common misconceptions about job searching over 40 that, I think we'll tackle today through Bob's question. So I'm really excited to do this.
Absolutely. Yes, I welcome everyone, even those under 40. Okay. So, resumes. Okay. So, Lisa, you were a recruiter early in your career. How has the job search changed since your recruiting days?
I would say during the times I recruited, and for maybe like the first 5, 6, 7, 8 years of doing the resume business, there was always a lot of focus on tenure. I have 25 years of experience, or this person has been in the business a while, or they've been, the phrase I hate the most, but that was popular, a decade or so ago, was, the seasoned CFO. I'm like, let's reserve the word seasoned for French fries, and that's about it, right? So but what I've seen now, how it's changed is seniority doesn't matter. And to rely on seniority as your basis of qualification is really using ageism as a reason why you're qualified. And it really has nothing to do with whether you have 25 years experience, 35 years of experience, or 5. It really comes down to the achievement. So I'd say that how job searching has changed now in the last, say, 5 years, and this is a statement for every age, is really don't focus on your tenure. Don't focus on your seniority. Right. Focus on your recent relevant achievements and how they pertain to the job that you are targeting or the person that you're networking with. What is it going to be about your background that they're going to be most interested in? And that's typically going to be an achievement that pertains to something they need accomplished or a problem they need fixed in their organization. So lead with that. And frankly, if there's a theme for today, is that accomplishments, achievements are ageless. So if you can lead with that, you're not leading with age.
Good. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I have also told my customers that leading with their age, it really doesn't show value. Rather, what you really need to focus on your resume and throughout your job search are the accomplishments. But I do have a question for the audience, and that is, in your summary on your resume or even your LinkedIn profile, do you lead with your years of experience? Raise your hand if that's the case. And I won't mention your name. I just want to get a sense of how many of y'all do that. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so Lisa, essentially you're saying that that's not what you want to do, correct?
It's not what you want to do. Now, I mean, I'm always hesitant to give the sweeping, piece of advice, not knowing individual situations. If
Mhm.
someone wants to say they're a 10-year director of finance, I don't think that's necessarily problematic, because whether you have 10 years or 20 years, and you say you're 10 years, maybe the last 10 years of your career have been in financial leadership, then that's not necessarily showcasing age, right? It's just showing a length of experience that is still within the ballpark, right? If leading with age, if you believe age is a problem in your job search, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So I'm always of the mindset, don't lead with the chin. You know, if it's not a problem in your job search and you want to say you're leading with 25 years of experience, then that's fine. Maybe you have a skill set that doesn't, is in demand. Maybe you have a skill set that there aren't a lot of candidates that do it. So, even if you had your resume done on, pink scented paper, it may not matter, right? Because you have an in-demand skill set and they're going to make concessions based on the fact that there's a lack of talent in your field. And so they just want to talk to you no matter what. But if that's not the case for you, you need to adjust your marketing based on the supply and the demand of what you do and the industry or profession that you do it in. And if there's a majority of candidates, if you're competing against a lot of others, if you tend to have an industry that, and I hate to say it this way, but this is true, like some value youth more than others, then you got to play that game a little bit and not feed the beast. If it's an industry that values youth over being older, then it's even more so to not market yourself based on tenure and seniority, and lead with your achievements, which frankly should be the case anyway, right? If what we're saying is my age doesn't matter, I know how to do the job, then put your money where your mouth is and only lead with your achievements, right? So that's the key. Like, if you put it on its flip side, where somebody who's 25 says, I'm young, you should hire me, that doesn't mean anything either.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we all know people who have 30 years of experience and are amazing. We know people who have 30 years of experience and can't work themselves out of a paper bag. And the same with 5 years experience, right? We know 25-year-olds that are spitfires and going to rule the world one day, and then we know 25-year-olds who again can't work themselves out of a paper bag. So like, the age of someone really doesn't matter. And focusing on recent relevant achievements is ageless, and that's the key.
Now, well, what about the interview process? Have you seen any change in that?
I have, and I haven't, I mean, I have an observation that I've had for a while that, because I've seen patterns that might be familiar to some people on the call where, you do a phone interview, and then you're brought in for a first interview, whether that's Zoom or in person, and they're like, oh, and then they don't go forward, or maybe they don't go forward on the first interview, especially if their resume is leading with 25 years of experience, or it's going back 30 years. If they're interviewing you knowing or suspecting how old you are, and then you don't move forward in the next steps of the interview,
Sure.
the disservice I see people do to themselves is that they just assume it's ageism. And I'm like, if they were practicing ageism on a regular basis, they probably wouldn't have brought you in the first place, especially if you have that blaring evidence on your resume that you're not, 28, right? So then really it's about looking inward. Maybe it's something about how you're presenting yourself on the interview. You might be presenting yourself or saying something that presents you in a dated fashion. Dated is not necessarily ageism.
Right.
So we can, and I say we, because I'm 52, like, we have to come across modern and contemporary and lead with what's relevant. And if we're not doing that, then we might get put into the we don't want to interview you any further pile. And that's not necessarily ageism, right? It's hard to digest, but here's the good news. You can fix that. We can fix that. And we can work with, people like you, Bob, and get our skills to be improved. If we needed to hire someone for our own needs, that we can do that sometimes. We can do group coaching. We can take classes online. There's things we can do to make our skill set and our storytelling abilities focus on what's recent and relevant. We can't fix how old we are. So to fixate on what we can't change doesn't really help any of us, right? So.
Yeah, when you mentioned storytelling, I mean, that's a whole concept that a lot of people, escapes a lot of people. I mean, this could be a whole different topic, but very briefly, how important do you think being able to tell stories is in the job search?
I think telling stories is important, but it's more about just speaking frankly from the heart, right? It shouldn't come across super contrived or super forced. If you follow a format, either on your resume, on your profile, or in your interview stories, and there's many different formats out there, but I tend to go with the simplest, like the CAR format, right? The challenge you were up against, what action did you take to alleviate that challenge, and then what did the result look like when the challenge was eliminated? And there's other, you probably know a few different
ROAR,
there's a whole bunch of them, right? Yeah, SOAR, there's a whole bunch of them, but I just keep it simple. And if you take naturally to storytelling, then okay, go with the more complicated or more diverse, right, acronyms. But just keep it simple, like be able to express your achievement or what you've done in that format. Like, what was the context? What was the scenario going on at work? And then how did you fix it? And then what did that fixing it look like? And why did it matter? And if you can tell that sort of a pattern story, either as a bullet on your resume, or maybe a small paragraph, 2-sentence paragraph on your profile, or within like a minute or two verbally in a conversation, you're going to then come across more progressive, more modern, because you're now talking in an achievement-like manner, and then take the added step of making sure it's relevant to the person to whom you're speaking. So your homework on the culture, and phrase it in a way that's going to resonate with that person who's hearing it or reading it.
Perfect. Okay, so I do have some questions that the audience have asked, and the first one is, how would someone over 50 that has been unemployed for a few years and trying to get back into the workforce handle job searching?
So that's a great question, and sorry you're going through that challenge. First, I would make sure you have a current position filled out on your LinkedIn profile. Now, that I don't mean fake a job that you don't have.
Right.
But I can also send you this article, but if you Google unemployed LinkedIn chameleon resumes, you'll come up with an article that I wrote that what you should do with your profile when you are currently not working. I recommend you do not use the career break function, which is a good step in the right direction. I won't talk about that here, but just fill in an employer section.
So so you're talking about LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Clear on this, yeah. So the profile, yeah, okay.
So I would fill out a current position, because it helps the algorithm of LinkedIn. It puts you in searches more readily when you have your current position filled out. And I would use those spaces to say what type of job you're looking for, what you've been doing during the gap. I don't know if there's volunteer work you've done, classes you've taken, family members that you've helped out, part-time jobs here and there, anything that shows what you've been doing during the gap to the best of your ability, right? Like, and I say this again as a general statement, right? But the key is that you want to show that you have motivation, that you have a sense of urgency, that you have the skill sets, right? That you have the traits that employers are going to want to hire, but it's hard to find in somebody. Like, you either come with it or you don't, right? You can't train somebody to have a sense of urgency in a lot of cases. So if you can at least demonstrate in your volunteer work, in the class that you took, in helping your family, or whatever it is that you did during that gap, or even just job searching. I've attended networking meetings, I've joined this, I've helped out my job club. just show a sense of urgency and a sense of purpose and a sense of accomplishment in whatever you did. So do that on your resume and your profile. And then the second piece of advice that I give you is don't rely on job boards.
Good. I'm glad you mentioned that. Absolutely.
You know, because job boards are, my opinion, you may or may not agree, Bob, but I believe job boards favor the keyword optimize, those that are keyword optimized in alignment with what they want. So if you're a staff accountant and you know the job is a senior accountant and you're submitting to a job board, you're going to be more likely to get taken than somebody who just graduated with an accounting degree and is trying to get into accounting, because the language is there. That, you know, they might, somebody might search for staff accountants looking for the next step, or out of certain companies, right? They might search for people that they want to recruit out of companies. And no matter how well you write your profile or your resume, if you don't have those natural titles or employee competitors, you're not going to get chosen, because you know, it's career. If you're transferring into an industry or getting back into it, you're going to get your best shot talking to a person. And the best way to do that is to network with people in your network, you know, through your contacts, through emailing them, calling them, texting them, using LinkedIn. If you have 200, 300, 500 plus connections, when was the last time you've reached out to all of them? Literally all of them. And, you know, it could be, you know, if you might be friends with some of your kids, you know, friends. Well, if you're in your 50s, your kids might be in their 20s or 30s, like network with your kids' friends. Maybe they have parents that are your age that are now working, and you can network with them, or people that you use services for in your town, or prior alumni, people of prior employers you've worked with before. If you graduated from a community college or a college, four-year college, go find people who graduated from the same school and reach out to them, whether you know them or don't know them. But you're going to get chances, bigger chances, from reaching out to people than having a gap trying to get through a job board or an applicant tracking system. It's unfair.
So part of the answer to this question is that networking has become more prevalent or more important than in the past.
It is. I don't think it's ever not been important. You know, I mean, I really, and this is no slight to the job board business, but like, I think ever since Monster ran its, you know, a Super Bowl ad in like 2000, and everybody thought they were going to get a job on Monster, and it was like, you know, the Insta response when you submitted a resume and all of a sudden you had 2 interviews. Like, I think we've all been trying to get back to that, and it's never coming back, because that only was that fast because nobody was on it, you know. And once everybody got on it, now it's just as clogged up as, you know, newspapers were, as, you know, email accounts are now. And now it just comes back to networking. And I'm not saying people don't find jobs through job boards, but it's one tool. And, you know, maybe 20 to 25% of hires happen through job boards, according to various sources of hire studies. The number varies based on the study, but most people that are not going for linear next step linear path are going to be better served by talking to people.
Let me read a statement that one of our audience members wrote, and that is, I feel like this is all about negative. It is to be a bit older. I'm proud to express the great experience I have. Well, that's awesome. You know,
absolutely.
I don't think we're trying to be negative here, though. You know,
I mean, if I'm coming across that way, definitely my apologies. I think what I'm really trying to say is don't focus on the age, not because it's bad, it's because it doesn't matter. Right. We have skills, we have experiences, we have traits that speak to certain aspects of a particular job or culture of a company, and pitch that, you know.
That is what we're going to talk about in a little bit, though. So
absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. We got to stay focused.
We will. Yeah, we got many questions to go through. All right, so what are you seeing in terms of ageism? I think you've addressed this to some extent. But
I have, but I do want to point out just one thing. You know, I mean, ageism exists. And I think those of us, you know, the 95% of us over 40 on this call, I think we just have to accept it. Doesn't make it okay, ever. clearly it's wrong every time it happens, but it's going to happen at some point here or there for some of us. And the key is to just move on to the next thing, and we can talk more tactically in a granular way with certain things and some of your other questions. But like, I think the key is to admit that it exists, and but you're not going to base yourself, market yourself based on age. Market yourself based
I
on
agree. I agree.
what you.
But don't you also agree that the younger workers experience ageism?
Absolutely. I mean,
No?
but here's the thing, like, isms exist of all levels, right? All kinds, some more, intensely horrible than others. But, sometimes people under 30 are saying nobody's giving me a shot. And they're just assuming I don't know anything because I'm under 25 or I'm under 30, or, you have a kid who graduates college early. People think that, they can't digest the fact that the 20-year-old or the 21-year-old with a 4-year degree and possibly a master's can do anything. That's ageism in the other direction, right? So like,
yeah, or job ads that call, entry level positions that call for 10 years of experience.
which is that, I don't even think that's ageism. I think that's idiocy, to be honest. That's just ridiculous. That's a lazy company that doesn't want to train,
right,
and wants to pay a little bit. That's
agreed.
I don't know if that's ageism as much as it's silly.
It is silly. It definitely is silly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to another one. So how should job seekers respond to ageism?
Specific questions that maybe you're asked by an inexperienced interviewer, like a general, that's the angle I'm taking with this. I think you can ask, like, how is it relevant to the job? If you're asked how old you are, what year you graduated high school, like, first of all, these are all illegal questions, right? Yeah. But maybe it's just an inexperienced interviewer, which does happen. Again, it's not an excuse, doesn't make the company not liable for this stuff happening, but maybe it's a learning experience, right? So, I would just say, like, how's that relevant to the job?
Yeah.
And then try to move on, diplomatically, because there's still a job at hand that maybe the inexperienced interviewer is not indicative of the rest of the culture, right? Now, if you keep interviewing and that's the theme, well, then maybe you got to decide if it's the right place for you, despite how wrong it is, right? So, but generally speaking, I try to just say, how is it relevant to the job?
Okay. I do have some more questions here, and let's see. How do you turn a resume into a marketing opportunity, similar but different? I don't know what that exactly means, but.
I'm going to answer that very briefly in a way that I'm interpreting the question. Hopefully it's not wrong. If it's wrong, the person can clarify. But using a resume or a LinkedIn profile as a marketing opportunity is twofold. It's one, not only outlining the achievements that are relevant to what the prospective target employer wants, right?
Yeah.
But it's an opportunity also to make yourself happy, in that you should really be putting on this document, the tasks or functions or achievements that you want to continue doing, right? So I think sometimes something that changes when we're over 40, and it really can happen at any time, but I find that it happens with a lot more job seekers when they're over 40 or over 50. We've done a lot, right? There's a lot of stuff we're good at, but some of it we may not ever want to do again, right? So
I agree. Totally.
So don't put down everything you've ever done if 50% of it you never want to do again. Focus on putting what's relevant to the job that you're targeting, combined with the stuff that you want to continue doing. It's not just a laundry list of everything you've ever done. It's literally cherry-picked items that you want to keep continuing to do in your next job and appeal to that next job. That should be the deciding factor of what makes it on your resume. And that can also help you shorten your resume so you don't feel like you need 3 and 4 pages.
I agree, totally. And also, how would they understand what is relevant to the job?
You can look
would
at the
information?
targeted, if there's a job description, look at the job
Yeah.
description. I would Google, Google is one thing, but also on LinkedIn, look up people who are currently in the job. What do
Mhm.
they put on their profiles? Look up people
Oh,
who
yeah,
used to work
absolutely.
there. Look up people with those titles. Look at people at competitors of that company doing similar jobs. What do they say on their profiles? Which are the ones that you gravitate towards if you were a recruiter, that you'd go, you know what, this one looks like they know what they're doing. This one doesn't look like they're showcasing themselves that well. Well, then do the ones that don't copy anybody's stuff, right? Just to be clear. But, emulate the ones that resonate with you. Those are probably the people doing it right. And I say probably, and that sort of thing, but don't make sure yours at the minimum doesn't look like the one that you go, oh, they're not really marketing themselves well. Just make sure you don't look the same way. So, do some homework, and then based on the bullets they have on their own profiles of the people in similar jobs, or for the target, or the bullets on the target jobs, make sure you have achievements that speak to those tasks, not just mimicking the tasks on your own documents, but speak to that CAR format. What was the challenge? What was the action you took? And what was the result? And speak to how you have recent relevant achievements that are pertaining to that particular need.
Right, absolutely. And there's another question, and this one writes, I'm less proud of my recent experience, which occurred after my stint. I wish to return to my former work life field. How can I highlight my favorite field, especially on LinkedIn? See, that's tough with LinkedIn because it's all reverse chronology, but
So, I mean, the key is that this is where a little bit of storytelling comes into play, right? Like, so
yeah,
you
you
need
go
to
to the
put
about
things in the
section.
reverse chronological format on a profile. I mean, you can move things around, but if your first job on your resume is something that's 15 years old, and I'm picking a number because the person didn't say one, but I'm assuming when you say earlier in your career, it's a little older, then the automatic question when they see the date end in 2003, they're gonna be like, well, what have you been doing lately? And then the focus is on what you've been doing lately and not on the fact that you want to change. So the key is to write a summary, a resume summary, and a LinkedIn profile summary that shows after a second career of blank, you want to get back to your first career and why. And then on your resume, make sure that relevant experience is written where it might be from 2003, but try to make sure you can write the current 13 years in such a way that the relevant experience, even though not recent, is maybe at the bottom of the first page,
Hmm.
right? Because then psychologically, it doesn't seem as far back because it's on the first page, even
Right.
though realistically it's from 2003. But then the next step you have to do is show how what you've been doing recently, it has transferable skills into back to what you used to do. Because what you've been doing can't be a void. And
Right.
in some transfers, right, some things you want to go back to, it might be better to say you have recent transferable skills than say I did this back in 2001.
Sure.
And like I know some people who want to get back into hospitality because that's what they used to do, and then they did something else. They want to go back to hospitality. Well, in some ways, you can say like I used to work for Hilton, for Marriott, but my recent relevant experience shows how I do amazing guest service, client services, and that's all transferable skills. So the balance on whether there's a balance, a decision everybody needs to make because everybody's situation is different. Is it better to say I did this back in 2003 and make sure your experience is still relevant? Because some industries are completely unrecognizable despite being the same
Sure.
industry for 20 years, right?
The
Or
technology and
is it,
procedures.
or is it better to say I have recent relevant experience and I want to get back into it using my current skills?
Now,
That's the
are you suggesting
balance.
maybe a functional type resume?
So there will be people who will say a functional resume. I am not a fan
No, I'm not.
of those, but because recruiters, the first thing people are going to want to see, whenever I saw a functional resume, a recruiter, just imagine this, they're getting resume on their, resume after resume on their computer
Sure.
screen.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden this one's in a different format, grouped by function. And the first thing I used to do as a recruiter, and I'm not alone, is like, well, where'd they do this? How long ago did they do this? And
Exactly.
then they start
Right.
looking on the resume for the dates and the
Causes a
employment.
little suspicion. Yeah.
And it starts off with, what are they trying to hide?
Yeah,
That's
right.
how somebody starts off reading your resume when you do a functional resume. What are they trying to hide? So nobody wants that resume perspective is where they start. So I would rather have it be a very overt, transparent summary and do it in a reverse chronological format than do a functional resume.
Okay.
Also,
Even with the
functional are
resume?
using job boards too. Functional resumes don't work in ATS systems. So, while if you're doing a career change, you shouldn't be on job boards too much. If you do happen to submit it, it's not really gonna digest itself in most systems pretty well. So,
All right. Okay. Whew, a lot to unpack there.
yeah.
So, so what are some of the traits job seekers over 40 should tout in their job search?
I had a conversation yesterday with a new resume writer, and we talked about business cycles before COVID, and that person's business started in 2020. So they were not used to maybe some cycles that are happening now that I'm seeing are what happened before COVID, right? So those of us who've been around a little while, we have the benefit of history to recognize business cycles, to recognize that can help for preparedness. It can help for just observations to make decisions. And I think demonstrating, the history, I mean, even now, right? I mean, you're in the same boat. We've been through a few of these cycles. Some recruiters and career specialists this is their first cycle, right? One's not better than the other, but there is some value to knowing how I reacted in 2001 during that downturn, and then again in 2008.
Sure.
And maybe I'm a little bit calmer because I've been through this before, right? Whereas somebody, and I know how I was going through the first time, I was running around like chicken with my head cut off, and some others now are doing that because it's their first one. So I think that there's some benefit to going through business cycles and going through maybe really difficult client service situations and so now there's a repeatable process based on that experience versus it always being new. And I think that's something that can be depicted in the form of some of the achievements that you pick be on your documents and in your interview stories.
So you're also talking a little bit about life experience, not only job experience, but life experience.
Yeah, I mean, you can't take it away from us, right? We got it.
If we've survived it.
I got scars to prove it in some ways.
Anything else? What about, do you feel that, and sometimes, and then sometimes I'm proven wrong, but sometimes I think that older workers provide better customer service. And sometimes I say I'm proven wrong because I'll go into even Walmart and get lousy customer service from an older worker. But do you think in general that we understand the value of customer service? And
I've just learned not to make generalizations, right? Like I really just meet people where they are, see what they bring to the table about what they want to do and what they don't want to do and what I see that they can do and what they can't do. And then, and do that same thing with jobs, like don't assume younger recruiters don't know what's going on with the job. Don't assume older recruiters know everything about the job. Like that's all ageism, right? Like that's all stereotypes. So the more open-minded we can be about what we experience, believe we can change what we can change, right? Not to go all serenity prayer around us, right? Like, I mean, I'm not necessarily a religious person, but like, don't focus so much on what we can't change. Focus on what we can, which is improving our skills, improving our presentation. I mean, 2-3 years ago, I hated video and all this stuff. I'll be the first one to tell you, I hated it. I'm a writer. I want to write.
Right.
And if you look back at videos, anyone who goes to my YouTube channel and look back at 2018 when I first started, I mean, I was awful. And it's taken practice and it's taken bloopers and it's taken laughing at myself. And now, I'm better. There was people on video 10 years before me. I started,
right.
3 years ago. So you just,
I admire people like who will stick with it. I just abandoned videos on LinkedIn. you know, even though I, you know, perform in front of a camera for my work.
Right.
Just videoing myself, I just found it difficult to do.
But you know what? You don't need it for your job. I bet you if all of a sudden you needed it for your job or to job search,
Mhm.
you would power through it very begrudgingly and eventually get better at it, which is exactly what happened to me. So, and that's what I say to everyone on this call. If there's a part of the process that you're just like, "Oh, I can't believe I have to do this," because you've never had to, because you always were gainfully employed, or you always were the go-to person in the office or anything. You can still be that. Just
Mhm.
learn a different skill in which to do that and communicate that and articulate that. So control what we can control. We can always learn new skills, get better at something. Don't be afraid to be the new person in the room, in learning something, and then speak to what the person needs. And actually, the other thing is, I always would like to bring up, I don't know if it's one of the future questions. I don't know if I'm getting off track here, but another thing too in interviewing, and this can be a problem if you haven't worked in a while and want to work,
Mhm.
I suggest interviewing from a place of equality, like interviewing from a place of two parties at the table, virtual or otherwise, who are determining if this is a good business engagement to be a part of together, right?
You mean
Not this,
go in with the mindset of this, correct?
right? Go in with the mindset
Okay.
of this,
Yeah.
and don't think you have to jump through a hoop. Don't go through this process as if like you have to prove yourself. Because I
Sure.
think sometimes when we're, especially older people, I don't even say job seekers, I find myself sometimes even doing it if there's certain deals, deals I'm trying to close, or if I'm trying to land a particular like writing assignment or blogger assignment or something like that. Like, it's really about making sure this is a good match between two parties, and not
Right.
me jumping through a hoop trying to prove to somebody I'm the best. Because when we get into that proving I'm the best, then we start layering on more and more and more evidence of why we're great. And
Mhm.
it comes across like too much,
Oh yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
and it's not so much that
Yeah.
you're coming across desperate, but it's almost like, I always use the analogy of like, and I've been married 28 years, so I haven't been in a bar picking anybody up anytime soon, but like, like if you're at a bar and you meet somebody and they're like, and this is how great I am, and this is what I do for a living, and
Oh
this is how much
yeah.
money I make, you'd be like, oh my God, I gotta go, right? So
Yeah.
don't be that person on the interview. Like, you got to take it back a
Yeah.
notch
Be
and really try
authentic,
to
right?
evaluate this is a
Yeah.
good fit.
Okay, so I want to ask the audience in a raise of hands of how many of you feel exactly as Lisa has described in an interview, where you feel like you need to jump through hoops. Raise your hand if you feel that way.
Or overprove yourself.
Or overprove, Walter. Okay. Yeah. 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. I'm thinking about a tenth of the audience has raised their hand.
Okay,
Which is good, because the rest of them, I guess, don't feel that way, and
which is
that
great.
is good.
Yeah, I mean, this is a general thing, and a general type of presentation. So
Yeah.
if you get a few morsels that fit you, take them and apply them, and if it doesn't apply to you, you can leave it, and it's okay. So
No, I agree that you should go in with an attitude of equality. I
yeah,
do. No. Yeah, you don't want to be subservient to the interviewer,
exactly.
but
Even at a
you
staff
do want to
level,
respect the interviewer.
you
So
want to
here's
respect
the
the
thing,
interview.
right? So I think we talked a little bit about attitude at the beginning, and going into an interview expecting to be discriminated against ain't going to help you, right?
Right. I mean, that's actually that's a very good point, because I do, run into some job seekers, in our age bracket that they're expecting it. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
of course.
even when it happens, and AKA you were right, you've just put the other 90% of the situations that it wasn't happening in a weird light. And so you got to focus on what's working, and you got to focus on what's good. And I don't mean this in any like toxic positivity kind of way, but like, most people are good. Most people are looking for someone to help them. And this is the bottom line with any hire in my book. People want to hire people who are going to make their lives easier.
Oh,
Nobody
sure.
wants to hire somebody and then it's going to be their new, problem in their life, right? So interview from a perspective of
We
how are
want
you
to hire problem solvers, not problems.
Yeah, so how are you going to come across as if how are you going to make this person's job easier? That includes not being a threat, and I don't say that anybody's threatening an interviewer here, but sometimes being older and experienced, if you're with somebody who's inexperienced, they're just maybe in some cases automatically a little intimidated, right? They're maybe
Oh,
a little
great,
worried about their
great.
job or whatever. So how are you answering the questions to put them at ease? Right? Because their job being easier is they don't have to worry about you wanting their job, right? So how are you, this is about knowing your market, presenting your information in a way that is, amenable and digestible to your market. So how do you make yourself come across as somebody who's going to make somebody's job easier and that you're going to have their back? How do you demonstrate loyalty? How do you demonstrate being a resource for them? That's how you come across like you're not bored. That's how you come across, being of value. That's how you come across like you don't want their job. And there's nothing wrong with wanting their job, but you got to come across like you're on the same team, right? Especially if there's a predisposition that they think that you're going to be better at their job than they are.
I think this is a question, but sounds more like a statement. In many cases, ageism aligns with salary. Older folks make more money. If you're not worth your salary equals why did you get laid off?
I mean, I don't know if if
I don't
you,
necessarily believe in that though.
I don't think an older person just simply being paid more. I don't, and getting laid off because they want to cut costs. I don't think that's automatically ageism.
No.
That's also economics.
Mhm.
If that skill can be done at a 20% less salary with no effect to the outcome, and there's no return on investment justification for whether the person's
That
60 or
would be
40,
yeah.
right? It doesn't matter. If you can get that skill set done for 20% less, regardless of the age of the person, a company is going to do that. I mean, I always, and that might be, controversial for some, but it doesn't mean loyalty isn't valued, but you still need to keep your skill set up to date. You need to show value for the going through the cycles. You need to show the value of being someone who has the experience of the cycles and the business history, and what's the value in that. Like, do you save a client because you knew something about the client from 5 years ago that maybe somebody brand new doesn't know? You need to show an ROI potential on why you need to be paid more. Not simply go, I have 25 years experience, I deserve more. You got to show the ROI on that. I mean, and when people get a little like uncomfortable about that when I say it, I always use the analogy of like your own home. Whether you buy or whether you own your home or you're renting, like if you need somebody to come in and help do repairs in your house, like you're not automatically wanting to pay someone more just because they tend to maybe be around a while. Like people shop around for the most experience for the cheapest price that they can get, right? That's why people go to Walmart and not Banana Republic, right? Because they can get the pants at Walmart cheaper than they can get them at Banana Republic. So it's like people seek bargains, and then they seem to completely forget that when they look at employment spaces. Like companies are going to try to get as much experience as they can for the cheapest price. Do they make mistakes in lowballing people? Absolutely. Do they do it wrong a lot? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean it absolves us as that older worker of having to communicate why we're worth more. And that's our responsibility. We have to convince people why we're worth more, why it's worth paying the extra money for the experience.
Right. Okay. Whew, this is a heavy topic. Okay, we got another poll. And it is, have you experienced ageism? I'm asking some hard questions here, aren't I, Lisa?
You are.
Okay, so I've launched a poll.
Should we give a definition of ageism?
If we haven't already, then I don't know what more we can say. But yeah, we could. I'm getting a lot of great participation here. That's what I'm loving about this group.
That's awesome. You have a great audience. I'm really honored to be here. I define ageism as when all things being equal, a company has a pattern of choosing the younger worker, right? So,
Sure.
you know, that
When
to
an
me,
older worker can do the job as well as a younger worker, they choose the younger worker over the older worker.
right? Like, and by all things being equal, I'm talking salaries relatively equal,
Yeah.
things like that. So, that to me is ageism. I do believe a lot of what gets labeled as ageism is someone being outdated. And again, the good news is you can fix outdated. I can't fix how old I am. But I think that's the key that I just want to maybe put that out there if you hadn't voted already.
So 33% say that they have. They're pretty sure they have.
That's sad. I'm sorry.
What's that?
I said I'm sorry because it definitely does exist. The point of this
but-
presentation is not to say it doesn't exist. That's for sure.
No. And we're not coming here to say that ageism doesn't exist. That would be insulting people's intelligence.
Absolutely.
We are talking about how we can try to combat it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you wrote a post on LinkedIn about how your job search isn't to focus on people's pain. It's to help people be prepared. What do you mean by that?
This post that I wrote was actually, I felt it was my job not to, focus on people's pain. I hire I run an executive resume writing business, job landing consulting firm. And, I hire marketers to help me market my business or teach me different tactics to market my business. And there's a theme with marketers in general that, you want to focus on the pain someone's experiencing and, sort of bring that pain to surface as something that needs to be alleviated, right? And it really bothers me. I tend to subscribe to more the insurance mentality, again, the non-sexy marketing. But I don't like saying, be afraid, therefore buy this stuff to avoid the fear, right? I personally have benefited by somebody helping me be prepared back in 2007. And it really changed the trajectory of, me not staying in a job or me not staying in a job that I was not happy in. And I know that if this person didn't prepare me 8 months before, I would have taken a job that I would have been absolutely miserable in. So I really believe if people can have like marketing materials ready, know how to network, keep their network alive, even when they're not job searching, focus on the things they can change, like we've talked about here, like coming across with recent relevant achievements that are ageless versus relying on experience and just learning these different things, then you're prepared. You're prepared to either weather an adversity, if you get laid off unexpectedly or it takes longer to find a job than you expected, or you're prepared to capitalize on an opportunity, because in these chaotic times, there's, ethical opportunity that can be capitalized upon too, like a great job that you get called on, or something, a recruiter calls you for a great job opening, or there's all of a sudden an opportunity, your company's opening up another division and they need somebody to lead it, or they need somebody to spearhead a certain part of it that you're very good at. If you have this stuff ready, you know your wins, that you can talk about them on the fly, and you have your documents somewhat updated, you can actually put your hat in the ring as opposed to scrambling to get it all ready. And so I'm just a big believer in people being ready and fixing what they can fix, not trying to fix.
That sometimes means saying the tough stuff that needs to be said.
Yeah.
Right?
Don't be fixated on what you can't fix. Fix what you can fix.
Okay, so I have a question here from a good customer of mine, and that is, how do you respond to subjective questions with such level of certainty?
Can they give me an example of one?
I'm thinking maybe like a situational question, like what would you do in this situation?
Like situational interview questions?
Yeah, say an interview question.
Okay. I mean, as a general sense of situational interview questions, the best way to prepare is try to anticipate situations that will come up at that prospective job. And obviously this is easier to do if it's within the field that you're staying in. But I would, if you're doing a career change, I would try to talk to people or do research or read about, case studies, work scenarios, business cases, or simply talking to people who are in the job, if you can, from other companies within your network, that sort of thing, and find out situations that people have been involved in, and learn what they've done, try to anticipate what you would have done, and maybe try to pull situations that are maybe similar that you've done as examples, how you would handle a prospective situation that, is hypothetical.
I would like said person to write in the question box exactly what he means by a
if there's any examples or context, that would be helpful.
I just want to read something someone wrote in that question observation. I think I apply ageism to myself, and it impacts my confidence in my job search.
Yes.
Yeah, we can believe that, right?
We all do it, right? It's like the negative self-talk, right?
Right.
They're going to think I'm too old. They're going to think I am not going to learn that, or maybe, whatever, right? Like insert stereotype here, right? And, the thing that I literally told this to a customer yesterday, because we all have the negative self-talk, right? Me included.
Sure.
I'll be the first one to tell you, right? So
me too.
Whatever assumption you're making, do yourself the favor of finding the other side of it. Like for instance, I had a client yesterday was like, I can't believe I'm only starting to learn how to do this, car formation of selling myself on an interview at like 45.
Oh,
right?
Gosh, I say that to myself daily.
Right? And she's like, I can't believe I'm learning it now. I only knew this when I was 20. And I was like, all right, but you're learning it now. I said, and I'm going to tell you, I have clients that are 55. As much as you're being hard on yourself that you didn't learn this at 35, make sure that you're looking at the fact that you're still learning it sooner than some people who are 55. Like, you got to look at both sides. You're never going to be the worst person who's ever done this, or the person who's the most behind. I'm not saying don't be frustrated and don't make yourself better. Frankly, when you're frustrated, you usually make yourself better then. But if you're going to do that, I can't believe I did this type of thing, or they're going to think I'm this. There's somebody doing it worse than you. We never seem to see that.
No.
We only see us as the worst one and everyone before us who's better. And I'm trying to tell, so make sure you do an objective observation and try to find the 5 people that are doing it worse than you. That's not to make yourself feel superior, but it's just to give yourself an accurate picture that you are a human, and most of us are always going to be in the middle about something.
Absolutely. Okay. Lisa, my friend, we have 4 minutes until the hour. So shall we go forward and try to pump these all out? Okay.
Let's go.
All right.
I think we talked about this one.
You mentioned this earlier. What are some resume tactics job seekers should do to downplay their age?
Don't focus on age. Don't go back more than, generally speaking, don't go back more than 15, 20 years. Even if you're doing a career change or you want to go back to what you did, most of what we did 20 years ago isn't going to be relevant. There's exceptions to every rule, but generally speaking, don't go back 15, 20 years. Don't lead with past sounding, reminiscing sounding language. Don't lead with historical perspectives. Make sure your language is future focused, relevant to what you're targeting, and don't make your resume or profile come across like this historical, I hate to say the word, obituary. Make it like forward focused.
What a lot of resumes look like. They look like obituaries.
Exactly. So that's
or job descriptions themselves. So
right. So those are some tactics there. We talked about not leading with seasoned or age related things, especially if you think age is a problem. That's the thing.
Now, what about though if you're applying for a higher level position like CEO, CFO, where generally employers, look for older workers? Is that
I
the
mean,
exception?
again, there's exceptions to every rule, right?
Uh-huh.
A document is a marketing document that needs to speak to whatever you're going towards. So I've written 3-page resumes. I've written healthcare resumes that are 4 and 5 because they have lists of
Oh, gosh,
patents,
thank you for saying that,
right?
because some people
So
believe they have to have a one-page resume, and that's
that's
it.
like, that rule's got to go away. But you need to take these general statements and then apply it to your specific situation. And if you're looking for a C-level role, and if you're looking, some companies value your upbringing. If you worked at Coopers and Lybrand, which hasn't been the case as a company in, for almost 2 decades, I think now, because it's now all folded under Price Waterhouse. But some people want to see maybe that you did have your upbringing there if you're, a CPA or financial professional. So there's exceptions to every rule based, on what you're doing and where you're going and whatnot. But generally speaking, if it's not going to add to your presentation, don't include it.
So I
It's
have a
going to
question here from
detract from it,
someone.
don't put it.
He says, what if you were in the same role, director, with same company for over 15 years, with same company over 25 years?
Show the progression in either your titles if you've been promoted,
Yeah,
or show the progression in your responsibilities by having like subtitles, subheadings of like projects, show the scope of the projects getting bigger. That's you can show you always want to show progression either in the responsibilities, the areas that you oversaw or dealt with,
right.
or in the titles, or all
Because
of it.
you might be thinking, okay, so this person has been in the same role for 15 years. What has he learned? You know?
So how is your job different now than it was 15 years ago? And look, sometimes it's not that different. Well, then you got to like make it look different a little bit, like not in a way that you're lying, but
But
just,
not fudge anything.
yeah, like it's marketing, right? I mean, you got to do a little spin, but it's all rooted in the truth.
Okay. All right. So when a hiring manager is concerned that a senior level job seeker will be bored in a job, how should the job seeker address that? Love this question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a legitimate question on I
Yeah.
think both sides, right? I mean, the mindset of the person there is they don't want to have to retrain somebody, right? I mean, this scenario happens even with younger job seekers. It doesn't just happen with older job seekers. They want to make sure you're going to be happy, right? And yes, this could also be a cloak for ageism. I'm not denying that at all. But
Mhm.
I think you should be, you can flip it back and say, what about the role? What concerns about the role do you have that would make me be that you think I might be bored with? Like flip it back to them because they
Okay. And
may
if I
not.
were the employer and I say, well, it looks like you've done everything that we require.
Mhm.
You've done it all. I mean, it is a legitimate concern from employer's point of view.
Right, because they don't want you leaving in 6 months,
Exactly.
and I mean, the positive way of interpreting this is they want to make sure you're going to be happy,
Right.
right? So, maybe there's a reason why you only want to do one aspect of the job. Or maybe, then the key here is to say, well, yes, I've done all of it. I really enjoy this part. I don't
Exactly.
want the responsibility of the rest of it. And I'd rather now, because I know what it needs to be as a leader in this thing, or having done all of this, I know
Sure.
I can be a resource to the person leading it because I understand the bigger scope
Yeah.
is one way to take it. Another angle of it is I have insight into how these other parts work. So I know how to make my part the smoothest possible to make these other parts facilitate the
Because
process
I have
easier
experience.
because I have the big picture,
Exactly.
and again, it comes back to how are you going to use this information to be
Yeah.
part of a solution and make someone's life easier. If they get a vibe that you're going to come in and go, there's something wrong with that one, and I used to do it this way, and then they're not going to bring you on because they don't want someone to be a know-it-all, like problem, right?
Mhm.
They want to see that you're going to be part of the solution. And maybe it's all about your delivery. And if that's the case, if you find that this is happening to you more than once, then maybe you need to work with an interview coach more deliberately, right? Or work with your group more deliberately and really work on your presentation.
I think it's about persuasion. I think, first of all, you have to believe it. You have to believe that you're going to be happy doing what you've done in the past, but I think you need to be able to persuade the interviewers, and maybe this is where you're jumping through hoops a little bit, that you are going to be happy doing what you've done in the past.
Right.
So I do think it is a legitimate concern employers have, and
this is an analogy I tend to give people to try to understand what the employer is going through, right? So if you have two candidates that you have the same job, right? They're both qualified. One has 20 years of experience doing various parts of things, and the other one, a lot of it's new, but they have some experience that you can build upon. And you only have, like, for lack of this, $80,000 as a salary, right? Yep. Would you rather give it to the person who made 60,000, views an offer of 80 or 70 as like, oh my God, I hit the lottery, and they're gonna learn all these new things, or the person who used to make 100, who's taking 80 and knows already, and the job already is like old hat to them.
Right, right.
Like, it's not necessarily ageism to want to give it to the person who's going to be really excited about the new thing, right? So yes. The goal of the person who is experienced and willingly wanting to take a pay cut because maybe they don't want the responsibility or whatever the case may be, which is a lot of people, now you have to work at your discussion points as to why it's better to pick you over that person who's going to be really super excited about the job.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, nobody wants to bring somebody on board who they think is settling for what they have. People want to offer what they are offering and have people be excited by it. Right. So you have to show why you're going to be excited by it for them to think you're the right one.
And I think, and this is,
if you're coming across that you're settling for the job, it's hard for them to be excited that you wanted the job, because they're like, oh, this person's settling on my job. You know?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be the choice that's settled, you know?
Well,
I think just human nature. We all want to be wanted, and we want what we're offering to be wanted and not settled upon.
So now this is the last question. And how should an older worker address age questions? Even as blatant as how old are you? One of my customers was
again, it comes back to how is this relevant to the job? Just ask them that.
What if that sounds to me a little confrontational?
You know, I mean, is it, if they think that's confrontational,
let me get you confrontational, right?
You really need to be there. You know what I mean? Like sometimes, I mentioned earlier, I'm not a religious person, but I'm a big believer in, like, rejection's God's protection, right? So if they think that you're controversial, asking them why an illegal question is relevant to the job.
Yeah.
Instead of telling them to screw off, you're actually asking them why is it relevant to keep the conversation going. And if they still think that's offensive, you got to wonder, even if you really need the job, is this the right job for you?
Of course. Yeah.
So like, there's really no, to me, the only way to be diplomatic when somebody does an illegal question is to just ask them, why is this relevant? What information are you concerned about that you're trying to get from me?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm happy to give it to you, but I just don't see how my age is relevant to the job. And you can say it with a big smile on your face, but it is outright illegal. And if they're going to get offended by that, you got to wonder if this is God telling you this isn't the right place for you.
Right.
No matter how wrong it is, Abby.
So this is more of a statement. Lisa, you are fabulous. This has been super helpful.
Thank you.
These are nice things that we like to hear.
Whoever said that, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, follow me on LinkedIn, message me if you have questions. I know we're getting to like the end of the hour part, or we're a little over. I don't mind at all, but I know people got things to do.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Bob.
We've cooked almost 100% of them, but some people had to leave. So.
Yeah, feel free to message me, follow me, and I'm happy to answer questions. Give me 24 hours. I tend to pride myself on answering every comment or question. Or
you are so good about that, Lisa. That's
I really
something.
Try. I'm not perfect, but I try.
No, but you're very good at it. You're very good at it. But I want to thank you really for the time that you offered us, and just the great information you provided. One of the best I've had, to be honest with you.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you
In
so
terms
much.
of knowledge, I mean,
You're
yeah.
awesome. I'm
Well,
very grateful. Happy to help you guys. I wish you all the best. Think of what's possible. You know, there's always 50 ways something's not going to work, but focus on how it can work and just keep moving forward. So I wish you all the best. Thanks,
okay,
Bob.
you have a good time tonight with your friends, all right?
Thanks. I will.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so
All right,
much.
take care, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.